Claire Reynolds stood in my bakery at 5:42 on a Tuesday morning, still wearing navy scrubs and looking as if she had spent the night holding other people together. Her 6-year-old daughter Sophie slept in a booth with her cheek on a folded jacket. Claire wrapped both hands around her coffee and asked, "Would you be Sophie's dad for one day?" I thought she was joking. Then she showed me the school flyer, "Donuts with Dad, Friday at 7:30. Sophie's biological father had promised to come, then canceled by text minutes earlier. Claire's voice dropped. She already made him a card. I should have simply said yes. Instead, because humor was how I hid what I felt for her, I leaned across the counter and said, "Only if you call me husband." Her eyes widened. Neither of us moved. Then she took a slow sip and said, "Fine, husband. Don't be late." That one word changed the room and made me wonder whether a pretend morning could ruin the careful friendship we had built. If you believe showing up matters more than sharing a last name, like this story, subscribe and tell me, would you risk your heart to give a child one happy day? My name is Daniel Carter. I was 28 and I owned a narrow brick bakery called Carter and Crumb on the corner of Willow and 3rd in Cedar Ridge, North Carolina. The place had 6 tables, 1 temperamental oven, and a front window that fogged every morning before sunrise. I had bought it from my mother 2 years earlier after she decided 35 years of waking at 3 in the morning was enough. People assumed owning a bakery meant my life smelled like cinnamon and felt comforting. Mostly it meant flour in places flour should never be, supplier invoices, burned fingertips, and the constant fear that one broken mixer could erase my savings. Claire had first walked in 11 months earlier after a night shift at St. Anne's Children's Hospital. She was 24, a pediatric nurse, and so tired that she ordered an iced coffee in January and forgot to take it. Sophie had tugged her sleeve and whispered, "Mom, the bread man is talking to you." I had become the bread man after that. They came in 3 or 4 mornings a week. Claire liked plain coffee with too much cream. Sophie liked whatever had the most frosting, though Claire usually negotiated her down to a blueberry muffin. I learned that Sophie hated raisins, loved planets, and believed every loaf of sourdough had a personality. I learned that Claire rubbed the bridge of her nose when she was worried and used jokes when she did not want anyone to ask whether she was all right. I also learned not to ask about Sophie's father. My own father had left when I was 9. He had not vanished completely. That would almost have been easier. He called on birthdays, mailed cards 2 weeks late, and made promises with the relaxed confidence of a man who never planned to keep them. By the time I was 16, I had stopped waiting at the window. That history made Claire's request feel heavier than she probably understood. "You can still say no," she said after Sophie woke and wandered to the counter, hair flattened on one side. Sophie blinked at me. "Say no to what?" Claire opened her mouth, but I answered first. "Your mom invited me to breakfast at your school." Sophie's face brightened, then tightened with caution. "For donuts with Dad?" I nodded. She looked at Claire. "But he's not my dad." "No," Claire said carefully. "Daniel would just come as our friend." Sophie studied me with the seriousness of a loan officer. "Do you know how to make paper airplanes?" "Terrible ones." "Do you know any dad jokes?" "I own a bakery. My entire business is built on bad rolls." She stared for half a second, then laughed so suddenly that Claire had to look away. "All right," Sophie said. "You can come." Claire mouthed thank you over her daughter's head. I wanted to tell her I would have come without the joke, without the coffee, without needing to be asked twice. Instead, I handed Sophie a warm chocolate chip scone and said, "Friday, 7:30. I'll wear my most responsible shirt." As they left, Claire paused at the door. "Daniel?" "Yeah?" Her mouth curved, but her eyes stayed uncertain. "The husband thing was a joke, right?" The safe answer was yes. "Mostly," I said. She stood there one heartbeat too long before the bell above the door rang and morning air rushed between us. By Friday, I had convinced myself the whole thing was simple. I would bring pastries, sit beside Sophie for 45 minutes, make her laugh, and return to the bakery before the breakfast rush ended. I arrived at Cedar Ridge Elementary carrying 2 white pastry boxes and wearing a blue button-down shirt I had ironed twice. Claire was waiting near the front entrance in jeans and a cream sweater, her dark hair loose instead of twisted into the practical knot she wore after work. For a moment, I forgot what I was supposed to say. Sophie solved that problem by running toward me with a construction paper necktie covered in purple stars. "You're late," she announced. I checked my watch. "It's 7:23. Mom said early is on time." Claire lifted one shoulder. "Nursing habit." Sophie held up the paper tie. Across the front, in uneven marker, she had written, "World's okayest dad." I laughed. "High praise." "I didn't know if you were good at it yet." Claire closed her eyes briefly. "We discussed tact." "No, this is honest branding," I said, bending so Sophie could loop the yarn around my neck. Inside the cafeteria, round tables were covered with paper placemats and jars of crayons. Most of the men looked comfortable in the role they had come to fill. They carried backpacks, peeled oranges, reminded children not to swing their chairs. I felt strangely visible, as if everyone could tell I was wearing borrowed authority. A teacher at the registration table smiled at us. "Good morning. Family name?" "Reynolds," Claire said. The teacher looked at me. "And you are?" Before I could answer, Sophie said, "This is Daniel. He makes bread." The teacher waited. Claire's cheeks turned pink. "He's a family friend." I could have left it there. Instead, I held up the paper tie and said, "Temporary management." The teacher laughed and handed us 3 name tags. At our table, Sophie showed me a card she had made. The front had a drawing of 2 stick figures beside a yellow building. One figure had brown hair, the other wore a tall chef's hat. I recognized the bakery. "I made a new one," she said quietly. "For me?" She nodded but did not hand it over. "The first one was for Adam." That was the first time I heard her father's name. Claire's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. Sophie traced the edge of the card. "Mom said he had to work." Claire looked at me, and I understood the request hidden in her expression, "Do not correct her here." So I said, "Sometimes grown-ups miss important things, but I'm glad I got invited." Sophie finally slid the card across the table. Inside, she had written, "Thank you for coming even though you don't have to." 6-year-olds were not supposed to know that difference. I swallowed and said, "I wanted to come." The breakfast included a worksheet called "All About My Dad." Sophie crossed out Dad and wrote Daniel above it. Favorite food? Burnt toast. Favorite hobby? Making bread. Best thing about him? He makes Mom smile when she's tired. Claire read that last answer over Sophie's shoulder. Her gaze lifted to mine. Neither of us joked. After breakfast, the children were asked to build paper airplanes with their guests and launch them across the gym. Mine nosedived almost immediately. Sophie's flew farther than anyone's because Claire quietly folded the wings while pretending not to help. "You cheated," I told her. "I applied evidence-based technique. You corrupted a school competition. I improved an outcome." Sophie grabbed both our hands and pulled us toward the starting line. For a few seconds we moved together without thinking. Claire on one side, me on the other, Sophie between us. A parent near the wall offered to take our picture. Claire hesitated. Sophie did not. "Yes, please." We stood in front of a paper banner that said, "Thanks, Dads." Sophie leaned against my side. Claire stood close enough that her shoulder touched my arm. The camera flashed. The image looked natural. That was what frightened Claire. I saw it in the way she stepped away before the parent had even lowered the phone. Outside, after Sophie went to class, Claire handed me the photograph the school printer had produced. "You were good with her," she said. "I followed instructions." "No." She looked down at the picture. "You noticed when she was pretending not to be hurt. I know what that looks like." Her eyes softened. "Daniel, I need to say something before this becomes confusing." I already knew what was coming. "This was one morning," she said. "Sophie can get attached to people. I can't let her think that I'm replacing Adam." She nodded. "I'm not trying to, I know. But she doesn't always understand the difference between someone being kind and someone staying." The words landed harder than she intended. I folded the paper tie carefully and tucked it into my pocket. "Then we'll keep the difference clear." Claire looked relieved, which hurt more than it should have. As I turned toward my truck, she called, "Thank you, husband." I looked back. She was smiling, but there was something unsteady in it. "Any time, wife," I said. This time, neither of us pretended the joke meant nothing. For the next 2 weeks, we behaved almost normally. Claire still came in after night shifts. Sophie still argued that blueberry muffins counted as fruit. I still pretended not to notice when Claire looked at the school photograph on the community board beside the register. She had asked me not to display it, so I had tucked it behind a flyer for the hospital's spring fundraiser. Somehow, Sophie found it and pinned it up herself. The fundraiser was called Little Lights. St. Anne's raised money each year for families who could not afford meals, parking, or hotel rooms while their children received treatment. I had donated pastries before, but this year the event coordinator called and asked whether Carter and Crumb could host a children's baking booth. I said yes before checking my schedule. When Claire learned about it, she narrowed her eyes across the counter. "You volunteered for a Saturday event during graduation season? I make excellent decisions under pressure. You once ordered 300 pounds of rye flour by accident. The website was misleading. It said quantity." Sophie leaned over the display case. "Can I help?" Claire answered immediately. "No." I answered at the same time. "Absolutely." They both looked at me. I raised my hands. "Assistant position. No ovens, no knives, strict muffin-related duties." Claire sighed, but she was smiling. 2 hours. On the morning of the fundraiser, the hospital courtyard filled with folding tables, balloons, local musicians, and families wearing matching t-shirts. My booth had bowls of icing, trays of plain sugar cookies, and enough sprinkles to permanently alter the ecosystem. Sophie wore an apron that reached her ankles. Claire had come straight from a shift, yet she moved through the crowd with steady energy, kneeling to speak to nervous children and remembering every parent's name. I had known she was a nurse. I had not understood what that meant until I watched her work. A little boy named Micah stood at the edge of the booth with a surgical mask over his face. He wanted to decorate a cookie but would not come closer because the crowd was loud. Claire did not coax him. She sat on the pavement a few feet away, took a cookie, and began placing blue sprinkles in a crooked circle. "This was supposed to be Saturn," she told him. "It may actually be a tire." Micah's eyes crinkled above his mask. Claire handed him the icing bag without moving nearer. "You look like someone who can repair planetary damage." He took it. 10 minutes later, he was seated at the table beside Sophie. Watching Claire, I understood why tired parents trusted her. She did not make fear disappear. She made room for it without letting it control the next step. Near noon, a woman at the neighboring booth stumbled and grabbed the table. Claire was beside her before anyone else reacted. She lowered the woman into a chair, checked her pulse, asked clear questions, and sent me for juice. There was no panic in her voice, only direction. The woman recovered quickly. Low blood sugar. Afterward, Claire washed her hands at the outdoor sink. "You can stop staring." "I'm not staring." "You walked into a chair." "The chair moved." She laughed, and the sound loosened something in my chest. "You're good at this," I said. At keeping furniture from attacking you? At making people feel safe? Her expression changed. Compliments made Claire uncomfortable when they reached deeper than appearance or competence. "I'm good during emergencies," she said. "Regular life is less organized." Before I could ask what she meant, Sophie appeared carrying 3 cookies stacked on a napkin. "One for me, one for Mom, and one for Dad for a day." Claire froze. Sophie looked between us. "That's what you are." I crouched until we were eye level. "It was a very important job, but Daniel is still fine." "Okay." She considered that. "Can you also be Daniel for Saturdays?" Claire closed her eyes. I kept my voice gentle. "I'm here today, aren't I?" "That's not an answer." "She gets that from me," Claire murmured. Sophie waited. I looked at Claire, giving her the choice. After a moment, she said, "Daniel is our friend. Friends can have Saturdays." Sophie handed me the 3rd cookie. "Then don't schedule anything." That afternoon, after the booth closed, Claire helped me carry empty trays to my van. Sophie had fallen asleep in a folding chair with her apron still on. "I'm sorry," Claire said. "For what?" "She puts people into categories. It helps her feel secure." "Dad for a day is a terrible category?" "It's a dangerous one." I set down the tray. "Because of Adam?" Claire looked towards Sophie before answering. "Because he returns just often enough to restart the waiting." She told me Adam had been 19 when Sophie was born. He had not been cruel. He had simply treated responsibility like weather, something unfortunate that happened around him. He sent birthday gifts, made sudden promises, and canceled whenever showing up became inconvenient. "I stopped expecting anything from him," she said. "Sophie hasn't. And you think she'll expect something from me. I think you keep your promises. That makes you easier to trust." That sounds like a compliment. It is. It's also why I'm scared. I leaned against the van. "Claire, I won't make promises to Sophie without talking to you." Her shoulders eased. "But I'm not going to pretend I don't care about either of you." She looked at me then. Truly looked. "I don't know what to do with that," she whispered. "You don't have to do anything today." Behind us, Sophie shifted in the chair and called sleepily, "Mom?" Claire hurried to her. I watched her lift her daughter, one arm under Sophie's knees, the other supporting her back. Claire was small, exhausted, and stronger than anyone gave her credit for. Before she left, she turned and said, "Saturday dinner, my place, as a thank you. Is that for Daniel or Dad for a day?" Her smile returned. "Daniel." It should have felt safer. It did not. Claire lived in a small yellow house 3 blocks from the hospital. There were chalk planets on the driveway, a bicycle tipped beside the porch, and 2 pots of basil that had survived through stubbornness rather than care. I brought a loaf of rosemary bread and a lemon tart. Claire opened the door barefoot, wearing a green dress simple enough to seem accidental and distracting enough to make me forget my own name. "You're early," she said. Early is on time. That rule was never meant to be used against me. Sophie appeared behind her in star-patterned pajamas. "I made place cards." At the table, mine said Daniel in purple marker. Underneath, in smaller letters, she had added, "Not Dad, so Mom doesn't worry." Claire saw me reading it and nearly dropped the salad bowl. "Sophie?" "What? It's clear." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. Excellent boundary work. Dinner was spaghetti because, according to Sophie, adults who served fancy bread were required to eat normal food at home. We talked about school, the fundraiser, and the bakery. Claire asked whether I had always wanted to own it. "No," I admitted. "When I was 22, I wanted to design hotels." "You studied architecture?" For 2 years. Then Mom hurt her shoulder and I came home to help. I planned to stay 1 semester. And then I realized I liked building mornings more than buildings. Claire smiled. That sounds like something you tell customers. It's true. A bakery changes the first hour of someone's day. Sometimes that's enough. After Sophie went to bed, Claire and I sat on the porch with coffee. The neighborhood had gone quiet except for sprinklers ticking across a lawn. You left something out, she said. What? The part where you were engaged. I glanced at her. Cedar Ridge has no secrets. Your mother told Sophie. Sophie told me. I had been engaged to a woman named Paige when I was 25. She had loved the version of me who planned to become an architect in Charlotte. She had not loved the man who smelled like yeast and could not take a weekend off in December. She wasn't wrong for wanting a different life, I said. We just kept pretending our lives were still moving in the same direction. Did she leave? We both did. She was simply brave enough to say it first. Claire rested her mug on her knee. Is that why you joke when something matters? I turned toward her. She looked almost apologetic. You did it at the bakery, the husband line? That wasn't only a joke. I know. The answer sat between us, quiet and dangerous. Claire stared at the dark street. I had Sophie at 18. I was halfway through my first semester of nursing prerequisites. Everyone told me to take a year off, but I knew if I stopped, I might never go back. So I took classes during the day, worked evenings, and slept whenever my mother could watch her. You became a nurse at 22. She nodded. I was proud of that. But I also learned that every good thing could collapse if one person became unreliable. A babysitter, a boyfriend, Sophie's father. So I stopped building plans that depended on people staying. That sounds lonely. It's efficient. It can be both. She gave me a look that said I had reached a place she had not invited me into. I stood. I should go. Daniel, wait. Her hand closed around my wrist. The contact was light, but neither of us moved. I like you, she said. More than I should. My pulse kicked hard. She continued before I could answer. But liking you is not the difficult part. Sophie likes you. That changes the cost of being wrong. I'm not asking you to decide our whole future tonight. No, but you don't date just me. I know. Do you? Her eyes shone in the porch light. Because a bad date for you is an awkward story. For her, it can become another man who said he would come back. I understood her fear. I also understood that she was using the worst thing someone else had done as proof I might do it too. I can't promise nothing will ever hurt, I said, but I can promise I won't disappear without telling the truth. Claire released my wrist. That sounds reasonable. It's all I have. She looked down at her coffee. Then maybe we start with dinner. We just had dinner. A date, Daniel. My breath caught. She looked up, nervous but steady. One date. No pretending, no titles. I smiled. Can I still bring bread? You're incapable of arriving without carbohydrates. The following Thursday, I closed the bakery early for the first time in 8 months. We ate at a small Italian restaurant by the river. Claire wore her hair down again. I told her about burning 400 dinner rolls before my first catering job. She told me about fainting during her first anatomy lab and waking up beneath a poster titled Professional Resilience. There was no dramatic moment when the evening became important. It happened through accumulation. The way she remembered I hated olives. The way her laugh became quieter when she was genuinely happy. The way she stopped checking her phone every 3 minutes once Sophie's grandmother confirmed bedtime had gone smoothly. When I walked her to her car, she leaned against the door. This is the part where normal people kiss, she said. I've heard rumors. I'm not very good at normal. Neither am I. I gave her time to step away. She did not. The kiss was soft and brief, but when I pulled back, Claire's fingers remained curled in the front of my jacket. That was not efficient, I said. No, she whispered. There wasn't. For 6 weeks we built something carefully. I met Claire for breakfast after her shifts. She came to the bakery after closing and helped label boxes while Sophie did homework at a corner table. We did not use family words. I never called myself Sophie's father, and Claire never called me husband again. But the relationship changed anyway. Sophie began saving me a seat at school events. Claire left a toothbrush in the apartment above the bakery, then removed it the next morning, then brought it back 3 days later without comment. I learned how to braid hair, badly. Claire learned how to shape dinner rolls, even worse. For the first time in years, my future included people before I had consciously invited them into it. That was when Adam came back. He walked into the bakery on a Monday afternoon wearing a gray suit and the uneasy confidence of a man rehearsing an apology. I knew who he was before he introduced himself. Sophie had his eyes. "Daniel Carter?" he asked. I wiped flour from my hands. "That's me. I'm Adam Shaw, Sophie's father." The word father sounded like a claim. I kept my voice even. "What can I do for you?" He looked toward the photograph on the community board, the one from Donuts with Dad. "You can tell me why my daughter is wearing another man's paper tie." "It was a school breakfast." "I know what it was." "Then you know why I was there." His jaw tightened. "Claire had no right to replace me." I should have told him that no one had replaced him. I should have stayed calm. Instead, I said, "You can't be replaced in a chair you chose to leave empty." The anger left his face for a second, revealing embarrassment underneath. "That's between Claire and me," he said. "No, it's between you and Sophie." The bell above the door rang. Claire had entered with Sophie beside her. She stopped when she saw Adam. Sophie did not. "Dad?" The hope in her voice made all 3 adults look ashamed. Adam crouched and opened his arms. Sophie ran to him. Claire's face became unreadable. "He had moved back to Cedar Ridge," Adam explained. "He had a new job selling medical equipment, an apartment with a 2nd bedroom, and a fiancée named Brooke. He wanted regular weekends with Sophie." Claire listened without interrupting. Then she asked, "How long have you had the apartment?" 3 weeks. "And the job?" 5. "When did you decide to tell us?" He glanced at me. "I was going to call." Claire nodded once. "Of course." Sophie pulled on Adam's sleeve, asking whether he could come to her planetarium presentation on Thursday. He promised he would. Claire closed her eyes. After he left, she turned on me. "What did you say to him before we arrived?" "The truth. That is not an answer." I repeated the conversation. Her face tightened. "You had no right. He came into my bakery and accused you of replacing him. And you decided to fight him? I told him showing up matters. You are not Sophie's parent, Daniel." The sentence struck with surgical precision. Sophie was coloring at a table across the room, close enough that we kept our voices low. "I know what I am," I said. "Do you? Because Adam sees that photograph, Sophie calls you dad for a day, and suddenly everyone is making decisions about my daughter except me. I have never made a decision for her. You challenged her father. I challenged a man who blamed you for his absence. That was not your job." I looked at her. "What is my job, Claire?" She folded her arms. "Am I your boyfriend only when Sophie isn't in the room? Am I allowed to care about her until caring becomes inconvenient? You keep asking me to show up, then punishing me for standing too close." Her eyes filled. but her voice stayed controlled. I asked you for 1 day. No. You asked me on a date. You brought your toothbrush back. You gave me a key to your house. And none of that makes you her father? I never said it did. Then stop acting like you have something to prove. The bakery went silent around us. I lowered my voice. I'm not trying to prove I'm better than Adam. I'm trying to understand whether there is room for me in your real life. Claire looked toward Sophie. That is exactly what I'm afraid of, she whispered. Because if I make room and this ends, Sophie loses you too. You keep protecting her from a future that hasn't happened by making sure no future can happen. Her expression hardened. I need time. I hated the phrase because it sounded like a door closing politely. How much? I don't know. She took Sophie's hand and left. On Thursday, Adam did not come to the planetarium presentation. He sent Claire a message 20 minutes after it ended. A client dinner had run late. I learned this from Sophie, who walked into the bakery the next morning carrying a foam model of Saturn and said, Dad had important work. Claire stood behind her, pale with exhaustion. I did not criticize Adam. I did not say I would have gone. I simply asked Sophie to show me Saturn's rings. That restraint cost more than anger would have. For the next month, Claire kept our conversations practical. She picked up Sophie's breakfast, paid at the register, and left before the coffee cooled. The toothbrush disappeared from my apartment. The key to her house remained on my ring because returning it would have made the distance official. Adam tried, in uneven bursts. He took Sophie to the zoo one Saturday and canceled the next. He attended a parent conference, then forgot to call on her birthday morning. Claire documented everything and arranged a formal visitation plan through a family mediator. She did not ask me for advice. I respected that boundary so completely that it began to feel like absence. Then St. Anne's offered her a position at a children's hospital in Raleigh. The job came with better hours, tuition support for a pediatric nurse practitioner program, and enough money to stop measuring groceries against the electric bill. It was everything she had worked toward. I learned about it from my mother. Claire's moving? Mom asked, while helping me glaze morning buns. The tray nearly slipped from my hands. What? She came in yesterday. Said Sophie wanted one last birthday cake from you before they left. I stared at her. When? 3 weeks. Claire had been offered the job 2 weeks earlier. That evening, I drove to her house. She opened the door already wearing the expression of someone prepared to defend a decision. You should have told me, I said. I was going to. When? After the moving truck? Sophie doesn't know yet. But my mother does? I needed to order the cake. I laughed once, without humor. Of course, keep the bakery informed. Daniel, don't. Don't what? Act like this matters? Her eyes flashed. It matters too much. That's the problem. I stepped onto the porch and lowered my voice. You didn't take the job because of me. No, I took it because it is good for Sophie and good for my career. I believe you. She blinked, surprised. But you hid it because of me. Claire looked away. Tell me the truth, I said. Are you leaving because Raleigh is the right next step, or because distance solves the problem of deciding whether I belong? Her silence answered first. I can't build Sophie's life around a relationship that might not last, she said. Then don't. Build it around your work, her school, the people who love you. Let me decide whether I can be part of that. You have a bakery here. I know. You can't move. I didn't say I could. Then what are we talking about? We're talking about whether we try, weekends, driving, making a plan like adults instead of ending something because ending feels more controllable. Her voice broke. You make it sound simple. No, I make it sound possible. She wrapped her arms around herself. Adam said he would fight the move.
Then the mediator and the court will deal with that. He said Sophie needs her father. She does. She also needs a mother who isn't afraid to accept a good future. Claire's eyes met mine. And what do you need? The question stopped me. I need to be chosen, I said. Not because Sophie's father failed, not because you need help, not because I can make breakfast. I need you to choose me as the man you love, or tell me you don't. Tears gathered in her eyes. I love you, she whispered. Relief rose so quickly it almost hurt.
Then she said, and I'm still leaving. The relief vanished. I love you enough not to ask you to abandon your life, she continued. And I love Sophie enough not to promise her another family before I know it can survive. I wanted to argue. Instead, I heard what she was actually saying. She loved me, but fear still held the deciding vote. I took the key to her house from my ring and placed it on the porch table. I won't chase you into a life where you've already decided I'm temporary, I said. Her face crumpled, but she did not stop me. I walked back to my truck carrying the old paper tie in my jacket pocket. I had kept it since the school breakfast. World's okayest dad. The joke felt cruel now. For 3 weeks I worked until exhaustion made thinking difficult. I prepared Sophie's birthday cake, a solar system made of fondant planets, with Saturn slightly too large because she believed it deserved more attention. I told myself it was just an order. The night before her party, Adam came to the bakery. I'm not here to argue, he said. Then you picked an unusual place. He looked tired. Claire says Sophie is moving. She accepted a good job. I filed an objection. My hands stopped shaping dough. He rubbed the back of his neck. I thought keeping her here would prove I was serious. And now? Now Sophie won't talk to me because she thinks I'm stopping her mother from becoming a nurse who helps more kids. I waited. Adam stared through the window into the dark street. You were right. I keep treating fatherhood like something I can claim instead of something I do. I had imagined hearing him admit that. It brought no satisfaction. What are you going to do? I asked. Withdraw the objection. Set a schedule I can actually keep. Drive to Raleigh twice a month until I prove I deserve more. That's between you and Claire. He nodded. It is, but I needed to tell you something else. Sophie doesn't talk about you like you replaced me. She talks about you like you stayed. After he left, I sat alone in the bakery until the first timer sounded for the morning loaves. I finally understood the mistake all three of us had made. Adam thought love was a title. Claire thought love was a risk to manage. I had thought love had to be proven by being needed. Sophie had understood it better. Love was who stayed, and staying did not always mean standing in the same town. Sophie's birthday party was held in the hospital courtyard. Claire had invited classmates, nurses, my mother, and, after a long conversation, Adam. He arrived early and helped arrange chairs. When Sophie saw him, she let him carry the telescope. It was a beginning, not a reward. I delivered the cake at noon. Claire met me beside the van. Adam withdrew the objection, she said. I know. He told me he came here. I lifted the cake box. Where do you want Saturn? Her mouth trembled. Daniel, you should take the Raleigh job, I said. It is right for you, and I was wrong to make it sound like a choice between your future and me. But we never gave us a real chance. I had hired my assistant manager full-time. I could spend 3 days a week in Raleigh and return for the bakery's busiest mornings. A restaurant there had agreed to test my bread. It was a 6-month plan, with dates, costs, and room to change. Claire stared at me. You did all that? I stopped assuming love had to arrive as certainty. And if 6 months is hard? Then we tell the truth and make the next plan. She stepped closer. What about Sophie? We move at her pace.
I don't become her father because Adam disappoints her. I become whatever she and I build over time. Claire's tears spilled. I love you, I said, not as a rescue.
I love the nurse who can calm a frightened child, the mother who finished school when everyone expected her to quit, and the woman who calls fear efficiency. A laugh broke through her tears.
I choose you, she said. Not because I need a substitute, because I want a life with you in it. She kissed me in the hospital courtyard while my mother pretended to study the balloons. Is Daniel coming to Raleigh? Sophie asked. Yes, Claire said. A lot. So what is he now? I crouched beside her. Daniel is still fine. That's boring, Claire glanced at me. He's my boyfriend. Sophie frowned. Can we upgrade him later? I'll work for the promotion, I said. 6 months became a year. Claire thrived in Raleigh. Adam kept the schedule he had promised, not perfectly, but honestly. I learned that staying could mean long drives, packed lunches, video calls from a flower-covered office, and returning after disagreements instead of disappearing.
On the first anniversary of Donuts with Dad, I took Claire and Sophie to the bakery before opening. Sophie handed me another paper tie. This one read, "World's Best Bonus, Dad." Then she placed a velvet box on the table. Claire stared at her. You were supposed to wait. I waited a whole minute. I opened the box and removed the ring I had chosen with Sophie. Then I knelt beside the booth where Claire had once asked me for one day. Claire Reynolds, will you call me husband for real? She laughed through her tears. Yes, husband. We married the following spring in the hospital courtyard. Adam walked Sophie to her seat, then shook my hand. No one was replaced. The family simply became larger, steadier, and more honest. At the reception, Sophie wore both paper ties and announced that my one-day trial had officially ended. She was right. The best promises are renewed through ordinary mornings, long drives, difficult conversations, and the choice to return. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who believes family is built by the people who keep showing up.